We have testing, testing, testing. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, perfect, perfect. All right, so welcome to today's live stream. Um, Please like the video for the 20 some of you who have been actually listening to some of this live stream. I want to thank you guys. Hopefully the channel will keep growing. Um, as of yesterday, this was what the map looked like in the House races. The House was called for the Republicans yesterday. They reached the 218 seat threshold that was necessary for a party to gain control of the House. So they reached that goal yesterday. We still have several races, about 6 or 8 races left that have yet to be decided, and about half of those, both parties have so far an advantage in those races. And so today we're going to go over, do a little bit of update of what's going on in uh, in the outlook of the house. And again, I do apologize for just presenting these live streams in a very kind of almost statistical approach, but I feel that before we do any type of like op-ed or opinion pieces later on, that we have the information first before we start formulating or start talking about uh opinions and so forth. So that's why the approach, we kind of, my feeling is that we have to take a look at what the landscape here is looking like in the country. And so you look at the picture here that, the pretty much the rural areas of the United States, that they're not that populated, right? But they're going Republican. And if you look closely in those races, specifically county by county, you find that in this election, they actually swung even more in favor of Trump, and that Trump actually did make some inroads in some urban areas. But again, this is taking into consideration that Harris received about 10 million less votes than Biden. So it appears that the Democratic Party failed in getting out the vote on election day this past Tuesday. So we want to keep that in mind. And so moving forward for that party, I think a wise thing for them to do is to do more outreach, not so much in the suburbs, but more focus more on the rural areas. Because in the suburbs, I think the Republicans won the suburbs, but it was the difference was not that significant. But the difference in the rural areas between Republican and Democratic support was really stark. I think the Republicans got something close to like 70% of the rural vote, and Democrats got about 30%, a little over 30%. So that's what that party has to consider, whether they want to do a more outreach in the rural areas. I don't think they're going to do it, but again, it's important for people on the left, the real left, to have this knowledge, this information, so that in the future they can tell that party, "Hey, look, we told you so." Right? Just like what's going on today, with people who are telling the Democratic Party, "You see, you should have gone for Bernie in 2016, 2020. It would have avoided this mess." And now some people on the center, like David Brooks, well, he's more conservative than, and even recently, James Carville, apparently, I heard that it came out recently and said, you know what, probably Bernie had a point. And maybe, so I think people are now in the party. There are some people are having buyer's remorse over Clinton and Biden and Harris. Okay, good. So let's take a look here at what's going on in specifically the House. So the background here, by the way, it's as of yesterday. So again, this here it is, 218. And actually, the Democrats, they called another race. I don't know where. Well, I think it was the Oregon one, right? Yeah, that this is the race that they called. And I had been saying that this person is going to win, because they had a 2,000 vote lead. So the ABC News called it apparently, and they're giving this district to the candidate by the last name of Bynum and Chavez de Rivera, who was the incumbent, lost this seat by over 10,000 votes. Sorry, it wasn't 2,000, it was a 10,000 vote lead, uh, as I recall now. And yeah, this is with 90% of the vote counted. So I think they're now realizing that the remaining 10% is the trend is not going to favor the Republican, and there are four candidates actually running, and the other two have gotten pretty significant support, a total about 7%. So it doesn't look like that the remaining votes would have gone into Republicans' favor. So this brings the Democrats closer to that 218 number, even though they're not going to reach it. But the closer they are, in the next election, it just gets easier for them to flip the House. So this seat gets flipped. So at the moment, there's no net gain. No, so this is again. I'm glad we're looking at this because people on the mainstream media, they're pointing out, oh my God, the Democrats got blown out. Well, yeah, maybe in the presidential election, they got blown, but I can't. I don't think you can make the argument that the Democrats were blown out in the Democratic uh among Democratic voters in the presidential election, because the difference was just several thousands or 100,000s vote difference in these swing states. So it wasn't like a clear, overwhelming victory by Trump in those swing states. It wasn't a couple, but in the majority of them, it was really not. And especially Nevada and Arizona, they were called days after the election was over. So so on the presidential election, yes, the Republicans won, right? But it's only like a 2% on the popular vote difference. Over in the Senate, you had, I forget the number of Democrats who were up for reelection, but the Republicans had a clear advantage. And usually in a realignment, like the media claims this is, you will see the party who is pushing the realignment get about at least five seats flipped in the Senate, or six or eight, and you only see the Republicans at the moment. They have a two-seat majority after the election, whereas before the Democrats had a one-seat majority. So they've only flipped three seats, and we're still waiting for the results in Pennsylvania. Even if the Republicans do win Pennsylvania, it would just be a three-seat margin of victory that they, or the advantage that they would have in the Senate. And here in a House, which is a more micro picture of the country, how the country's voting, the Republicans at the moment, they've have made no significant progress at all. There's zero pickups, zero net gains at the moment. They flipped, I think they flipped seven seats. The Republicans have, and if I'm not mistaken, the Democrats have at the moment have also flipped seven seats. But the thing is that the Republicans had the majority to begin with. So at the moment, it's a zero net gain by Republicans, um, uh, there. And let me see if I can take a look at 2023 House of Representatives breakdown. Let's see if we can take a look at. Oh, this is not. Um, see if we can get the number. So, right, here's the number. At the moment, there are 220 Republicans in the House. There's two vacancies, so that um, they take that into account. And the Democrats have 213. So, in order for the Democrats to break even, they just need four more of these seats that are remaining that to be called to reach that number 213. Um, and yeah, so there it is, and that's that district in Oregon, number 5 that just got called uh for them. And then the other race I had talked about was, of course, the race in Maine. Let me just actually zoom in here so we can see this district a lot better here. So you still have the Democratic candidate. He's still ahead by a little over 2,000 votes, and the picture has really not changed. They have not called this yet, but if they Democrats, it appears they're going to keep this seat. That would bring their number up to 210. Um, so that they would be breaking even. The other seat that the Republicans are at the moment they hold is Iowa's District 1, and the results here they haven't changed. It's the 801 vote. The Republicans are probably going to keep control of this. It's the 99% of the vote counted. I don't know if they're waiting for absentee ballots or mail-in here in this district. I don't know why this race is not being called. Oh, yes, I think it's not being called because since it's less than 1,000 vote difference, there's highly likely that there's going to be a recount in this state. So we probably won't even know um, for several weeks what's going to happen in this district. Let me go back here. Let's see here. All right, and what else do we have here? Let me just zoom in here. A couple more times here. Okay, so we talked about that. Okay, and so now I think that what's left, of course, let's just go outside of California. This race, I had spoken about it. Uh, the Republicans might flip, but it wouldn't happen in this round. And I had explained this before that under the state law in Alaska, in order for a candidate to win the House seat in their only district here, is to reach the 50%. So 50% is a threshold. And at the moment, no one has it. So what happens then is that they go to a runoff, and the top 2 vote getters get to compete in the runoff to see who wins this seat. So the Democrats at the moment do have control of this red state. This candidate, I think she won this seat in the previous midterm election. So we probably won't even know what's going to happen in Iowa and Alaska until maybe several weeks from now. Or in the case of Alaska, who knows? It might take longer than a month there. And the other seats that remain here would be California District 13 has yet to be called. It's 76% of the vote counted, with the Republican ahead by 3,765 votes. So that's that district there, 13, that they're waiting on. And so if the Democrats do pull out a victory here in that seat, they would be flipping that seat because the Republicans do control that at the moment here. And that was called Baragon Waters. Okay. So I'm trying to see what. Oh, Min. Just saw. Okay. My mistake. This person won. Interesting. So then they called this. This was one of the seats that had not been called the 47th, and it was called for the Democrats here. But there's another one here. Here it is. The 45th district. Michelle Steele is ahead here with 89% of the vote counted, but she's only ahead by 349 votes. So if the trend here does not change, this probably going to be a recount that's going to be requested. Talking about recounts, that would be a good segue to talk about what the Harris campaign is actually doing. Um, so, and this is not, by the way, we're not trying to promote the Kamala Harris campaign at all. Uh, so, but just pointing out that the campaign is still raising money, uh, even after the election has ended. And the reason that is because the campaign had had raised over $1 billion, slightly, I think over $1 billion, and they went bankrupt. They went in debt, actually about 20 million. It's reported. There's no exact figure as to how much debt that the campaign had accumulated, and so they're still keeping this website open for people to donate so they can make up that $20 million debt, because they have debts that they need to pay off to uh, so some of the people who worked on the concerts that they were hosting before the election day. And so I just wanted to take a look at it. It says here, our fight continues with a handful of key Senate and House races. So they're talking about the Senate race in Pennsylvania. So that's probably, also going to be there's probably going to be a recount, because the difference is so small in the Pennsylvania seat. In House races, so the House races that we talked about, the one in Iowa, the couple in California, there's probably going to be a recall. The one of course, in Alaska, there's going to be a runoff there. So it's still too close to call. We are keeping our organizers and volunteers on the ground in those states to see the election across the finish line. If you're able, please donate to the Harris Fight Fund today to ensure we have the resources to elect Democrats down the ticket, ready to hold the Trump administration accountable. So this is interesting for several reasons, besides the campaign debt that the campaign had accumulated after raising a record $1 billion. It raises questions, right? What's going to happen? What's the future of the Democratic Party? I was just listening to Ezra Klein in the New York Times podcast on YouTube, and the segment was titled, "Is this like the end of the Barack Obama coalition for the Democratic Party?" Is it? They seem to think it is. Who knows? That remains to be seen, because as of yesterday, the LA Times had a headline saying the California Governor Kamala Harris, question mark. Okay, new poll finds she'd have a clear advantage. And so the article goes on to basically state that if Kamala Harris were to run for governor in California in 2026, she would have a major advantage over the crowded field of candidates vying to succeed Governor Gavin Newsom, new polling shows. The latest poll from the UC Berkeley Institute of Governmental Studies, co-sponsored by Times, found that if Harris enters California's crowded 2026 gubernatorial race, nearly half of voters would be very or somewhat likely to support her. Okay, and there is the poll right there on the left. With California voters, would they support Kamala Harris for governor in 2026? So this might not be the end of Kamala Harris as we know her. Maybe this is her Richard Nixon moment. Of course, Richard Nixon was vice president under Eisenhower in the late 50s and ran for president in 1960 and lost to JFK, and went on to run for governor of the state of California in 62 and lost, actually. But then he came back in 68 and won the presidency. So who knows? Maybe we have not seen the last of her, but I just think, I'm not sure, because you raised $1 billion, the record amount. You outraised Trump by almost 3 times, and yet you lost. So what would be the argument for keeping you here? So it could be that maybe she's gonna check the terrain to see if she can get the race in California, the gubernatorial race, and stay in a national spotlight for the next several years. So maybe that she can run in 2032 or maybe 2036 to keep her options open. So who knows? Maybe the Barack Obama coalition maybe is not completely done. She might come back. Who knows? And she is a part of the coalition because she hired people from the Barack Obama campaign who were former officials, okay, to work on her campaign. So, and she was the vice president of Joe Biden, who was Obama's vice president. So, this is why she would be included in this coalition. She, in fact, tried to duplicate, it was reported that she would try to duplicate Obama's strategy, his game plan from 26 from 2008 to her campaign in 2024. So there's the breakdown there, and among Democrats, she would have 54% support, and, among percentages of total likely voters, the very likely or somewhat, it would be total of 46%, with not at all likely is 36. That's a very strong, not big number for not at all likely, right there. So it goes on to state here that Harris would have a stronger support overall from Democrats, who have a nearly 2-to-1 voter registration advantage over Republicans. About 72% of Democrats said they would be very likely or somewhat likely to consider Harris for governor, compared with 8% of Republicans and 38% of voters with no party preference. So there's a no party preference right there. 24 and then 14 would be 38. 35%, of course, say hell no. So yeah, so she would have definitely strong ID, as this person here points out, and that's one of the campaign fundamentals that a candidate would need to run a successful campaign in this day and age. Again, it remains to be seen. She's a great campaign fundraiser, but it just remains to be seen whether they would do such a thing given what happened. You know, that she raised $1 billion, uh, and the media is asking these very pointed questions about how efficient her campaign used this money, especially in the last month of the campaign. And she, by in the last month, actually in the last 3 weeks, or 2.5 weeks, she still had 118. So she had gone through 900 million of that $1 billion that was raised, and had 118 billion left in the last 2.5 weeks remaining, and used up all that money in 2.5 weeks, and ended up about $20 million in debt, according to Politico. Okay, so the and so it raises questions, and I'll go back to that article there soon. But the concerts that the campaign hosted were running up the bill, a campaign bill, to about 20 million. And I think we had talked about this before, that in the exit polling, we found that most voters, by the final week of the campaign, when did you finally decide for whom to vote in the presidential election? The voters, 86% of the voters by the end of September, right here, they had already decided. Okay, so then after September, you're looking at 13 to 14%. By October, another 6%. So you have there a total of 92% who have made up their mind. Then in the last week, you're talking about maybe the last week, you're reaching out to the 7% who claim that they were still undecided. So how wise was it to hold these expensive events that cost you 20 million to reach out to the 7%? Maybe the concert should have been done earlier. Maybe the concert should have been done after the convention, when she had all this media attention, and maybe they could have done a voter registration drive or somewhat. And then I'm going to go to the next article so that we see what how the money could have been spent. here. But this concert with these celebrities had cost the campaign, according to the New York Post, $20 million. And so some people who were at this event were like Katy Perry, Lady Gaga, John Bon Jovi, and they actually had to cancel a concert with Alanis Morissette because they said it would have cost them even more millions more, and they realized that they had been in debt, and they wanted to cut any further debt to the campaign, so they ended up canceling the Alanis Morissette concert. But again, here in the final day of the campaign, as we saw the exit polling, you only had about 3% of approximately about 3% of the voters who had yet to decide who they were going to vote for. So you're wasting 20 million on a concert in a swing state to reach out to about 3 million voters who are scattered around the country, right? Not maybe necessarily Pennsylvania. So it just raises questions about the Democratic Party and how we've known this before. People who were critics of the Democratic Party, how they just mismanaged things, and how even Barack Obama had bankrupted the Democratic Party when he had left the presidency. The DNC had been in debt. So that goes to another. That's another different topic. But so here's some pictures of the celebrities who performed at this concert, and then Oprah Winfrey is also getting flacked, and she recently just denied the report that she was paid $1 million fee by the campaign. So this is really like angering a lot of people. By the way, the idea that it's the chairwoman, John O'Malley Dillon, that's the person. Well, she didn't come up with the idea, but she approved it. The idea came from, I think it was an Obama, a former campaign official. Here it is. It's Stephanie Cutter. The two sources said that the Obama campaign alum Stephanie Cutter pushed the concert concept as a way to woo lower propensity voters to the polls. While performers donated their time and talent, the set still required an immense commitment of manpower and financial resources. So the stage crew, probably renting the halls or the location is going to cost you a lot of money, and so forth. Cutter's plan was supported by fellow Obama alum David Plouffe, one source said. So then the decision went to the chairwoman of the campaign who endorsed it. But she claimed that she was not sure whether she was going to do this and then so at the last minute she gave it the green light. And then the article goes on to say that another source pointed out that O'Malley Dillon's waffling led to increased production costs there, if in fact it is true that she had second doubts, because it would have led to increased production costs, because putting together last minute makes the cost much more expensive there. So I was going to go a little bit more into detail about the whole cost here, but it just raises questions as to, again, the Democratic Party, how they mismanage money and funds and so forth. So would Harris running in the California Congress, would that really be in the Democratic Party's best interest to keep her name out there after, what we've seen here? Again, it wasn't her idea, but it's her responsibility. At the end of the day, the buck stops with her. So it is true that the blame can go. A lot of people have shared in this blame. It is true, but at the end of the day, it's the candidate who they're accountable. Period. It's not up to the surrogates of the campaign or a high-level campaign official. It's up to the candidate who has hired these people, because the candidate thinks that they have good judgment. So in order for that party to move forward, they need to be put people in positions of power who know what they're doing and are not mismanaging vital resources. So Here it is. Apparently, according to, I think this is the New Republic, um, or no, Political. They reported several days ago that the Harris campaign, had rejected the Congressional Black Caucus's outreach proposal. It was a $10 million. So I would argue that this would have benefited her. They would have been a better use. It would have been a lot more cheaper, at least half cheaper than what they had ended up spending on that one concert. Uh, so, and let's just read the article here. The Congressional Black Caucus brought the Harris campaign a $10 million plan, this article quotes, in September. Okay, so this is back when there's still a lot more voters are still deciding, who am I going to vote for? Trump, Harris, or third party, or I'm not going to vote at all, maybe. Okay, so to mobilize undecided, see that, Black voters in key swing states, according to the memo viewed by Political. Well, that could have been useful, right? If it was a move that the campaign ultimately rebuffed, according to two people familiar with the matter, who were granted anonymity to discuss private conversations. So already people privately are upset with this decision that the campaign completely rejected. In a memo dated September 16th, the Black Caucus approached the campaign about a project dubbed the quote, Freedom Plus Opportunity Bus Tour. Its goal was to target and mobilize Black voters who remained on the fence about the candidates with less than 50 days left before the election. It called for 1.5 million for a bus tour that will deploy Black Caucus members to those key states. Another 8.3 million for a pair of social action groups. Let It Resound and Rolling Sea Action Fund that focus on battleground House districts that had a Black voting population of at least 8%. So I totally get where this group is coming from. Completely makes sense. You're killing two birds with one stone. We're gonna get this bus tour to go through these swing states, and we're gonna run pass through these districts where they're swing districts. So we're gonna pick up support in these districts to help the Democrats retake control of the House, and in the meantime, get these people to vote for Harris in the presidential election, right? And of course, Pennsylvania, right? It would have been helpful for the current senator who's fighting to keep his job. It would have been helpful for him. This plan, on the face value, definitely looks like a better plan than the concert that they held with celebrities for because a lot of people just don't, especially young people, they don't follow a lot of those celebrities anymore, right? Like, who listens to Bon Jovi, right? Probably people who are Generation X or or older. And even Lady Gaga, she's moving along. I mean, this is probably people who the young people, this current generation, is really probably not even listening to, um, and so forth. There it is. And the idea here of this bus tour would have been a 12-stop stretch across the battleground states, and including Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, Nevada, and Arizona, all states they lost to Trump in the presidential election. They won some Senate seats, like in Arizona. They won that. And I think in Nevada, they also retained control there. So there it is. Please like this live stream. And this, again, it just begs the question as to what path the Democrats want to move forward. The House really did not, it was really not that bad here in the House. If you look at the picture up here, I mean, it's break even. So it just seems like voters are just upset with both parties when something like this ends up happening. All right, so they want to punish the party in power and the White House, and yet they will probably vote for the other party. We did see that in Arizona, or ticket splitting voting going on, with people voting for the Democratic for the Democratic candidate in the Senate, Gallegos, and then voting for Trump in the presidential election. So there's just a lot to for the Democrats to look into for people outside the Democratic Party. But this is just information for you to use to, hey, maybe woo people out of the Democratic Party. Personally, I think that any type of electoral success in the short-term future, at least politically, it would, for people on the left, it would be inside the Democratic Party. There's no possibility for somebody outside the two main political parties to take power in this country. It's almost impossible. Why? Because the redistricting, period. These districts, most of these districts around the country are drawn by both major parties, and so they're going to draw it. They're going to draw the casino to. It's a casino. This electoral system, and they're going to draw these maps so that only a Democrat and only a Republican win. In the Senate, you have two independents, one in Maine and Vermont. I don't think there are any independents in the House at all. We almost had one other independent win the Nebraska race, but they got beat by the Republican candidate. But they came very close. So it just shows you it's a very difficult for someone outside the two major parties to win an election. So if we're talking about leaving the Democratic Party or working outside, just know that it's almost highly unlikely that you are going to take power. You might take power maybe at the local level, maybe that's a strategy. But again, I don't see any like movement among the left of doing any type of grassroots electoral political movement on the ground to take power, even at the local level. I just don't see it. You know, the parties right now that exist, they don't have that infrastructure, or they just have not had the success, for example, of the Bernie 2016-2020 experience. So again, and this is just information for also for people outside the party to, hey, let people either influence people out of the party if you think that that's the wise thing to do. It's up to you, or to influence people to change their worldview to be more critical of the Democratic Party, so that we can transform this to be a more working class party. And that would, if that happened, then that would be a better outlook for this country, because then working class people would actually have a shot at the American dream. And with that, I want to thank you for listening, for tuning in to the PDR live stream. Please like the live stream and share it with your friends. Thank you so much. And